When people are going through hardship, they often ask the same question again and again. They ask it in sujood, they ask it in tears, they ask it in silence when no one is watching. They say, Ya Allah, when will this end? And sometimes the test does not end when you think it should. Sometimes it continues even after you have prayed, even after you have tried to be patient, even after you feel exhausted. But my brothers and sisters, Allah does not end tests randomly, and Allah does not lift hardship without wisdom. When Allah ends a test, there is a sign, and it appears before the relief you are waiting for. Many people miss it because they are only watching the situation. Allah wants you to watch your heart. Let me share this with you carefully. When Allah is about to end a test, many people expect the outside world to change first. They expect the problem to disappear, the doors to open, the people to soften, the pressure to lift. They keep watching their circumstances closely, measuring every small shift, hoping this will be the moment everything finally turns around. But that is not how Allah works. Very often when Allah is preparing to end a test, the situation around you looks exactly the same. The challenge is still there. The uncertainty is still there. The delay is still there. From the outside, nothing seems different at all. If someone were to look at your life, they might say, you are still in the same place. Nothing has changed. Yet something profound is happening where most people are not looking. Something is changing inside your heart. You begin to notice that you are no longer reacting the same way you used to. The same words that once triggered anger now pass with less weight. The same silence that once suffocated you now feels manageable. The same pressure that once made your chest tighten now feels lighter, even though it has not disappeared. This change is subtle, but it is powerful. It shows up in how you breathe. You are no longer constantly holding your breath, waiting for bad news. You are no longer waking up with that immediate sense of dread. You still feel concern, yes, but it no longer controls you. The panic that once lived in your chest begins to loosen its grip. This is not because you stopped caring. It is because Allah is strengthening you from within. Many people misunderstand strength. They think strength means never feeling pain, never feeling fear, never feeling overwhelmed. That is not strength. That is denial. Real strength is feeling the weight of a test and still being able to stand without collapsing inside. When Allah is about to end a test, He does not rush to remove the pain. He removes the panic first. He removes the desperation first. He removes the constant inner noise that tells you, I can't handle this anymore. Why does Allah do this? Because if the situation were to change before your heart changed, you would remain fragile. The next test would break you the same way. The next delay would shake you the same way. Allah does not just want to rescue you from one hardship. He wants to prepare you for life itself. So He stabilizes the heart before He shifts the circumstances. You may notice that you are no longer begging Allah in a frantic way. Your dua becomes calmer. Your tears may still fall, but they no longer come from panic. They come from sincerity. You are no longer demanding an immediate outcome. You are trusting the process even if it still hurts. This inner calm does not mean the test is easy. It means your heart has grown. You begin to accept that some things are out of your control, and instead of fighting that reality, you surrender it to Allah. That surrender is not defeat, it is alignment. It is the heart finally resting where it was always meant to rest. This is why people sometimes say, I don't know why, but I feel okay, even though nothing has changed. That feeling is not random. That is Allah placing sakina into your heart. Sakina is not happiness. It is stability. It is the ability to remain steady even when the ground beneath you feels uncertain. And Allah places sakina only when a heart is ready to carry it. Another sign within this inner change is that you stop replaying the same thoughts over and over again. Earlier in the test, your mind was loud. It kept asking the same questions. Why is this happening? What if it gets worse? How long will this last? These thoughts drained you more than the situation itself. But now those thoughts come less often, and when they do come, they do not stay as long. You notice them, but you are not consumed by them. This is not because you found all the answers. It is because your heart no longer needs them. Allah has taught your heart to trust without seeing the full picture. You may also notice that your reactions toward others begin to soften. You become less defensive, less irritable, less sharp in your responses. Not because people suddenly became kinder, but because your heart is no longer operating from survival mode. When a heart is under constant threat, it lashes out easily. When Allah removes that internal threat, the heart relaxes. And the relaxed heart responds with wisdom instead of impulse. This change is deeply important. It means the test has already done much of its work. It has stripped away arrogance, impatience, and excessive attachment. It has humbled the heart, refined it, and taught it reliance on Allah alone. At this stage, even if the test continues for a while, it no longer feels unbearable. You stop counting the days. You stop watching the clock. You stop measuring your life by when this will finally end. You begin to live again, even inside the hardship. And this is where many people get confused. They think, if I feel calmer, does that mean I'm settling? Does it mean I've given up? No, it means Allah has carried you to a place of inner strength. This calm is not resignation, it is readiness. When your heart becomes calm inside the storm, Allah knows that you are no longer being defined by the test. You are no longer shaped by fear. You are no longer collapsing under pressure. That calm is preparation. Preparation for relief. Preparation for clarity. Preparation for whatever Allah has written next. So if you are in a situation that has not changed, but your heart has, do not underestimate that shift. Do not dismiss it as imagination. Do not ignore it because the problem is still there. That inner change is one of the clearest signs that Allah is working on your behalf. He is not late. He is not unaware. He is preparing you carefully. And when the heart is ready, the situation will follow. At the beginning of a test, most people make dua from a place of urgency and fear. The pain feels overwhelming, the confusion feels unbearable, and the heart is desperate for one thing above all else, for the hardship to end. So the words come quickly and repeatedly. Ya Allah, remove this. Ya Allah, take this away. Ya Allah, I cannot handle this anymore. There is nothing wrong with these du'as. Allah is most merciful. And He knows the weakness of His servants. He knows the heart cries out before it learns how to trust. But there is an important shift that happens when Allah is about to end a test. And it is one of the clearest signs that the heart has matured through hardship. The dua begins to change. You still want relief, but relief is no longer the only thing you are asking for. Something deeper starts to form in your heart. You begin to ask Allah questions that are no longer about escape, but about direction. You say, Ya Allah, guide me through this. Ya Allah, show me how to respond correctly. Ya Allah, don't let this trial distance me from you. This change matters more than people realize. At first, the test feels like an enemy. You want to run from it, you want to push it away, you want it gone at any cost. But when Allah is preparing to end the test, He helps you see it differently. You no longer see the hardship only as pain. You begin to recognize it as a process. You stop asking only for the door to close and you start asking Allah to teach you how to walk while it is still open. This is not because the pain has disappeared. It is because your relationship with Allah has deepened. You are no longer treating dua as an emergency alarm. You are treating it as a conversation with the one who knows you better than you know yourself. Earlier in the test, dua may have felt rushed. You prayed because you were scared of what would happen if things stayed the same. Your heart was tense. Your words were heavy. You were pleading from a place of anxiety. Now, even though the test may still be present, your dua slows down. You speak with more calm. You pause. You reflect. You ask Allah to shape your response, not just your outcome. This is a powerful sign of trust. It shows that your heart is no longer trying to control the timing or the result. Instead, it is placing itself under Allah's wisdom. You accept that Allah sees what you do not. You accept that there may be lessons you have not fully absorbed yet. And rather than resisting that reality, you cooperate with it. You may notice that your dua becomes more honest. You stop pretending to be stronger than you are. You stop using perfect words. You speak plainly. You admit confusion. You admit weakness. You admit that you don't fully understand why this is happening. This honesty is beloved to Allah. Allah does not want rehearsed dua. He wants sincere hearts. And when a servant reaches a point where they can say, Ya Allah, I trust you, even when I don't understand you, that is a sign of deep iman. Another important shift happens here. You stop making deals with Allah. At the height of hardship, some people bargain in their dua. They say, Ya Allah, if you remove this, I will do this. Ya Allah, if you fix this, I promise I will change. But when Allah is about to end the test, that transactional tone fades. You are no longer trying to negotiate your way out. You are seeking closeness, not escape. You say, Ya Allah, help me remain obedient regardless of what you decide. Ya Allah, keep my heart firm. Ya Allah, let me leave this test better than I entered it. This is a sign that the test has already softened your ego. You are no longer placing conditions on your worship. You are no longer tying your faith to outcomes. You worship Allah because He is Allah, not because He has already solved your problem. This level of sincerity does not appear at the beginning of hardship. It is forged inside it. You may also notice that your dua includes others more. Earlier, your pain consumed your attention. Everything revolved around what you were going through. But now, even while you are still tested, your heart opens again. You pray for others. You think of those who are struggling in different ways. You feel empathy instead of bitterness. This expansion of the heart is another sign of growth. Hardship often shrinks a person inward. It makes them self-focused. When Allah is preparing to end the test, He reverses that contraction. He allows the heart to expand again. And with that expansion comes clarity. You begin to realize that the greatest danger was never the situation itself. It was losing your connection to Allah during it. Once that fear disappears, the test loses much of its power over you. You may still ask Allah to remove the hardship, but your peace is no longer dependent on the timing of His answer. You trust that when relief comes, it will come at the right moment. And if it is delayed, it is not cruelty, it is care. This is a difficult level to reach, but it is a beautiful one. It means your heart has moved from resistance to reliance, from panic to patience, from fear to faith, from control to trust. And when a servant reaches this state, Allah does not abandon them. Allah does not ignore such a heart. Allah responds in ways that are always better than what the servant imagined, even if the response does not come immediately. So if you find that your dua is changing, do not overlook it. If you find yourself asking Allah for guidance more than escape, understand that something important is happening within you. The test is doing its work. Your heart is being prepared, and Allah is closer than you think. Sometimes the test ends not when the problem disappears, but when the heart learns how to walk with Allah no matter what remains. And once that lesson settles, relief is never far behind. One of the clearest ways to know whether a test is still in its active phase is to look honestly at what it is doing to your relationship with Allah. Not what you claim outwardly, but what is happening quietly in your daily behavior, your habits, and your reactions when no one is watching. At the beginning of a test, hardship often pushes people towards sin, not because they are bad people, but because pain exposes weakness. When pressure builds, patience thins. When frustration grows, the tongue becomes careless. When hope feels distant, obedience starts to feel heavy. This is why tests can be dangerous if a person is not aware. You may begin neglecting salah, not because you don't believe, but because your heart feels tired. You may delay prayers, rush them, or pray without presence. You may start complaining excessively, speaking with bitterness, or expressing resentment toward people who are not responsible for your pain. Some people even begin questioning Allah's decree in ways that damage their iman. This does not make you evil, it makes you human. But it also tells you something important. The test is still shaping you. When Allah is about to end a test, a noticeable shift takes place. The hardship loses its power to drag you away from obedience. The situation may still be difficult, but it no longer pushes you toward disobedience the way it once did. You become more careful, not less. You guard your salah more intentionally. Even when your heart is heavy, you may not feel motivated, but you still stand before Allah. You may still feel exhausted, but you refuse to let the test become an excuse for neglecting what matters most. This is not perfection, this is sincerity. Earlier, the test may have triggered sharp words, emotional outbursts, or impulsive decisions. But now, even when you feel anger or frustration, you pause, you think before you speak. You restrain your tongue. You choose silence over regret. This restraint is not coming from fear of people. It is coming from awareness of Allah. That awareness is one of the strongest signs that the test is nearing its completion. Allah never intends a test to destroy a person's iman. If a hardship is pulling you away from Allah, then it is still working on exposing areas that need correction. But when the same hardship begins pushing you closer to Allah, it has fulfilled much of its purpose. You begin to realize something important. Losing your connection with Allah would be a far greater loss than the hardship itself. This realization changes everything. You stop using pain as justification for bad behavior. You stop saying, I'm only like this because I'm suffering. You take responsibility for your actions again. You understand that while you may not control the test, you are always accountable for your response. This accountability is not harsh, it is empowering. It means the test no longer owns you. You may also notice that you stop seeking comfort in things that distance you from Allah. Earlier, you may have escaped into distractions that numbed the pain but left your heart emptier. You may have turned to unhealthy habits, negative conversations, or emotional dependencies that only deepened the struggle. Now, those escapes lose their appeal. You may still feel the urge, but you resist it, not because you are forcing yourself, but because your heart has tasted something better. You have experienced the stability that comes from staying close to Allah, and you do not want to trade that for temporary relief. This is a powerful transformation. It means the test has purified your priorities. It has taught you that relief without obedience is not true relief. Peace that comes from disobedience is fragile and short-lived. It fades quickly and leaves guilt behind. When Allah is preparing to end a test, He often strengthens a person's taqwa. You become more conscious of Allah in small moments, not just in public acts of worship. You are more aware of your intentions. You catch yourself before crossing lines you once crossed easily. This heightened awareness is a gift. It shows that the test has refined your character, not just challenged it. You may also notice that your repentance becomes more sincere. Earlier, you may have repented out of fear, guilt, or desperation. Now, your repentance is quieter and deeper. You seek Allah's forgiveness not because you are afraid of punishment, but because you genuinely want to remain close to Him. This kind of repentance cleans the heart. And when the heart is cleaned, Allah lifts burdens more easily. It is important to understand this clearly. Allah does not end tests when a person becomes flawless. He ends tests when a person becomes aware, when they can feel pain without letting it turn them away from Him, when they can struggle without abandoning their principles. This is why some tests last longer than others. It is not because Allah is displeased. It is because Allah is teaching something that cannot be rushed. But when you reach the point where the test no longer increases your sin, no longer weakens your iman, and no longer excuses disobedience in your mind, know that you are nearing the end of that chapter. The hardship may still be present, but it no longer defines you. Your obedience remains intact. Your conscience is awake. Your heart is guarded. And a test that can no longer corrupt the soul has very little reason to remain. Allah does not burden a heart forever when that heart has learned how to stay with Him no matter what. That is when relief draws near, even if you cannot see it yet. One of the most exhausting parts of hardship is not always the situation itself. Often it is the need to be understood. At the beginning of a test, many people feel an intense urge to explain themselves. They want others to see how much they are hurting, to acknowledge their struggle, to validate that the pain is real and justified. This is a very human response. When you are hurting, you want reassurance that you are not exaggerating, that you are not weak, that what you are experiencing truly matters. So you speak about it often. You replay the story. You correct misunderstandings. You defend yourself when people minimize your pain or misjudge your actions. But when Allah is about to end the test, something shifts inside you. You begin to feel less dependent on people's understanding. Not because the pain has disappeared, and not because others suddenly became kinder or more insightful. The change happens because your heart no longer needs external validation to feel secure. You slowly realize that being understood by people does not heal you the way being seen by Allah does. Earlier in the test, misunderstanding from others may have hurt deeply. When people dismissed your struggle, judged your choices, or offered shallow advice, it added another layer of pain. You may have felt lonely even in the presence of others. You may have thought, if only they knew what I'm going through. But now, that need begins to fade. You stop trying to convince people of your sincerity. You stop explaining every detail. You stop correcting every wrong assumption, not because you agree with them, but because your heart has found rest elsewhere. This is not bitterness, it is peace. When Allah is preparing to end a test, He shifts your reliance from people to Himself. You become content knowing that Allah knows your intentions, your tears, your patience, and your private battles. And when Allah knows, you no longer need to be seen. This inner shift is deeply liberating. You begin to conserve your emotional energy. Instead of spending it on explanations and justifications, you invest it in your relationship with Allah. You speak to Him more than you speak about your pain to others. You turn inward instead of outward. This does not mean you isolate yourself or become cold. It means you are selective. You no longer feel obligated to share your wounds with everyone. You understand that not everyone has the capacity to carry your story with care. This discernment is wisdom. Earlier, you may have expected people to react a certain way. You hoped they would support you, defend you, or at least remain gentle. When they didn't, you felt disappointed or even betrayed. That disappointment deepened the test. But when Allah is about to end the trial, your expectations of people lower. Not in a negative way, but in a realistic way. You accept that people are limited, they see from their own perspective. They speak from their own experiences. You stop taking their misunderstandings personally. This is a major sign of inner healing. You realize that people's opinions do not define your worth and their reactions do not determine your sincerity. You stop needing applause for your patience or sympathy for your pain. Instead, you become satisfied with Allah's approval. There is a quiet dignity that comes with this stage. You walk differently. You speak less about what you're enduring, but you carry yourself with more composure. Others may not know what you've been through, but they can sense a depth in you. This depth was formed in silence. Another important change is that you stop defending yourself against every accusation. Earlier, when people misunderstood you or spoke unfairly, your instinct may have been to correct them immediately. You felt compelled to protect your image. Now, you pause. You ask yourself whether responding will actually bring benefit or whether silence will preserve your peace. More often than not, you choose silence. This silence is not weakness, it is strength. It is the strength of someone who knows that truth does not always need a loud defense. Over time, character speaks louder than explanations, and Allah is the best defender of those who trust Him. You also begin to notice that you are less affected by gossip, judgment, or criticism. These things still exist, but they no longer pierce you the same way. You no longer replay conversations in your mind. You no longer dwell on what someone said or didn't say. Your heart is no longer living in other people's mouths. This is freedom. When Allah is about to end the test, He often removes the emotional dependence on others. He teaches you to stand with dignity even when you are misunderstood. He teaches you to be gentle without being fragile. This stage is important because many tests are prolonged by attachment to people's opinions. As long as a person needs external validation to feel okay, their heart remains unsettled. But when your heart finds its anchor in Allah alone, stability arrives. You may still feel pain. You may still experience moments of sadness, but you are no longer shaken by the need to be seen or understood by everyone. You trust that Allah sees you completely. He knows the nights you cried without witnesses. He knows the patience you showed when no one praised you. He knows the restraint you practiced when you could have reacted differently. And that knowledge becomes enough. So if you notice that you no longer feel the urge to explain yourself, if you no longer feel distressed when people misunderstand you, if you are at peace being silent about your pain, do not assume you have become numb. You have become grounded. This is often one of the final stages before relief. Because when a servant no longer needs the world to validate them, Allah knows their heart is strong enough to receive what comes next. And when Allah gives, He gives with wisdom, mercy and perfect timing. At the height of hardship, it is very easy to believe that you are being punished. The pain feels personal, the delay feels intentional. The weight of the test makes you question your past, your mistakes and even your worth. You begin to wonder whether Allah is displeased with you, whether you did something to deserve this, whether this hardship is a sign of rejection. These thoughts are common. They arise when the heart is overwhelmed and searching for meaning. But when Allah is about to end a test, one of the most important shifts that occurs is this. The test stops feeling like punishment and begins to feel like instruction. You begin to see that the hardship was not meant to crush you. It was meant to teach you. Earlier in the test, everything felt chaotic. You could not understand why this was happening or what you were supposed to learn from it. The pain felt random. The timing felt unfair. You felt trapped inside questions with no answers. But as your heart grows, clarity begins to emerge. You start to recognize patterns. You see how certain habits led you to this point. You notice how certain attachments weakened you. You realize how much you depended on things that were never meant to carry your peace. The test reveals truths you might never have faced otherwise. This understanding does not arrive all at once. It comes slowly, quietly, often in moments of reflection. You may suddenly think, if this had not happened, I would still be living the same way. Or, if this door had not closed, I would never have corrected my path. This is a powerful realization. It does not erase the pain, but it gives it meaning. And meaning changes how suffering is carried. When Allah is preparing to end the test, He often allows you to see what the test protected you from. You realize that certain outcomes you once wanted would have harmed you. Certain relationships you were attached to would have drained you. Certain paths you were chasing would have led you away from Allah. You may even feel gratitude for the redirection even though it was painful. This is not denial, this is maturity. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you start asking, what is this teaching me? That question alone marks a major shift in the heart. It means you are no longer fighting the test, you are learning from it. Another sign of this stage is that you stop comparing your test to others. Earlier, you may have looked around and thought, why them and not me? Why does everyone else seem to move forward while I am stuck? These comparisons only added to your frustration. Now, you understand that every person has their own curriculum. Allah teaches each soul in a way that suits it best. What breaks one person may not move another. What elevates you may not be needed for someone else. This understanding removes jealousy and resentment from the heart. You accept that your journey is uniquely designed for you. You may also notice that you take responsibility without drowning in guilt. Earlier, self-reflection may have turned into self-blame. You replayed mistakes and punished yourself emotionally. You carried shame alongside the hardship. But now, your reflection becomes balanced. You acknowledge where you went wrong without condemning yourself. You recognize your flaws without losing hope in Allah's mercy. You learn the lesson without defining yourself by the mistake. This balance is critical. Allah does not teach through humiliation. He teaches through awakening. When the lesson is learnt, the burden no longer needs to remain as heavy. You also begin to notice that you respond differently when the same triggers appear. Situations that once led you into the same mistakes no longer pull you the same way. You pause. You choose differently. You apply what you have learnt. This practical change is one of the strongest indicators that the test has served its purpose. A lesson that is not applied is not complete. But when you start living differently because of what you endured, the test has fulfilled much of its role. At this stage, the hardship feels less personal and more purposeful. You understand that Allah was not angry with you. He was guiding you. He was correcting your direction before you went too far. He was refining your character before elevating you further. This realization softens the heart. You stop seeing Allah as distant during your